Between two professionals of international development. I have Mr. Sylvester Abara, a technical director in one of the largest INGO in the world, and I have Florence Randari, an M&E professional that will talk to us about learnings as far as private sector engagement is concerned. This is a conversation between two professionals, and we start this conversation by asking our guests to introduce themselves to us. Florence.
Hey everyone, my name is Florence Randari. I am a monitoring, evaluation, and learning professional. I work on providing evidence-based guidance to implementation teams to make sure that the work that we are doing is guided by information from different sources, and I look forward to engaging with you.
Mr. Sylvester Abara.
Hi, my name is Sylvester Abara. I work here in this context of northeast of Uganda. I work as a technical director. My work is to engage and support several multi-sectoral processes through an integrated approach so that we can be able to realize the results in a bigger way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So this conversation is about private sector engagement. And the idea really is to try and find out if there are things that a development professional can do private sector engagement better. And what are the learnings that you both have had that you can share with us so we can be skilled in doing private sector engagement. So Mr. Barra, I'll start with you. What would you say are the approaches that has worked successfully for you in all of the countries that you've worked?
Yeah, so basically what we are talking about is, for us, majorly we focus on resilience programming. So resilience toward food and nutrition security. So for us to be able to arrive at that, we look at who are actually our clients. So we are basically looking at communities able to consume and to remain nutritionally secure. For us to do that, we need to inject several processes that looks at the environment itself. It looks at how the behavior of the client, how they're able to adapt into the ecosystem that you're working, and how other barriers that prevents them from being food and nutrition secure. But then we ask ourselves, what kind of investment that do we need to bring to this kind of people? So when we look at this kind of investment, we profile them based on how relevant they are in this particular community. So one of the investment is we look at how can we be able to increase production at this particular community. Because if you increase production, it means that household can be able to consume. So we are only not looking at the consumption, but we are looking at they're able also to make some sales so that they get money. They're able to afford other things that household needs in order for them to meaningfully survive. But then the element of who else can come and do more on top of what we are doing, and that is where the private sector comes in. And how do we sustain that? How do we work with government as an institution to be able to support that and to create an enabling environment? So when we bring this through a multi-sectoral approach, layered and sequenced in a way that they're well integrated, we can be able to start asking ourselves, are we on the right path? And that's we build in learning, where Florence now comes in and say, okay, can we step back and reflect? Is that what we do?
Exactly, yeah. So just adding from the profiling part as well. So what we are trying to do is make sure that we have a good fit as far as, our engagement with the community and with other stakeholders, in this case, the private sector. We need to make sure that we get what we are looking for, and we have to define that from the start. We are saying this is the community that we're working with, this is what they need, and we're trying to identify solutions. And if we feel like the private sector is one of the stakeholders that needs to be engaged, then we start engaging them when we already know what we need from them. So that's really the starting point, and that's where the data comes in from the M&E side as well, trying to figure out, mapping out the different people we need to engage. And once we have them on board and we have had those discussions about the different priorities from the different sides, then we start really monitoring that process and posing and asking questions around, are we where we are supposed to be right now? What are some of the things we are seeing from the community? How are they responding to the services or products? What do we need to change?
Definitely.
So that's really what Sylvester was highlighting.
Exactly. So there's an element of, giving an example of some of the private actors that we work with. So for us to be able to accelerate production, so we are looking at different livelihood activities. So one of them we are looking at on-farm, off-farm. These are people who majorly rely on farming activities. But then there are those who don't do farming activity, they do business. They do small trade activities, they engage in livestock trading, things like that. But then we have a particular group of people who majorly keeping animals in large numbers. So partly they divide them into animals that they want to keep for long, animals that they want to fatten for a short period, take to the market, earn good money. So for them to be able to do that, should be able to access animal health and other livestock support services. For on-farm, they need to get agro input supply. So thus we come with different private engagements. So we have like seed suppliers who provide seeds to these farmers, but they do not only provide seeds. They also, while they're providing seeds, they provide extension services. So now, enabling farmers to provide seeds and to be able to commercialize production of a particular value chain, like maize or beans or sorghum or green gram, for instance, you should be able to activate the market for them, because farmers get motivated when they produce, they're able to sell, and they're able to get money, and they're able to plow back money to, and that's why we are looking for working with private sector. For livestock support services, we are looking at how do we engage with private partners to avail treatment services closer to the farmers' doorsteps. Because of changing climate, the emerging diseases that are coming, and these animals need to be healthy for them to attract better prices at the market. Yeah.
So can I ask? So both of you have essentially worked in this area in different projects, in different contexts, in different countries. What would you say are the 3, 4, 5 steps that will encourage private sector to engage with the development project that the audience can take away from this and apply in their own projects? Florence.
Great, that's a good question. So from my side, I think the first thing, as we had mentioned earlier, is making sure that you're very clear about what you need as far as, engaging the private sector is, because as humanitarians and development sector actors, we have different social needs that we are catering for, but we also realize that making sure that the markets are working, that ensures sustainability and also scaling up. So as we go out to engage the private sector, we need to be very clear about what we need as far as, the private sector engagement is concerned. And then the other part as well, we need to understand our context. If we do not have players in the market right now, why are they not there? We need to be very, critical about, those issues that probably are preventing them from actually tapping into that market. So that as we look at solving a problem, we know exactly what type of problem we are solving, so that we ensure sustainability and scale when we are not there. And then I think one thing I'll add from the learning side, I think it's making sure that you put processes in place to really monitor that engagement. So when we talk about private sector people, they have their own way of monitoring. They have KPIs that they're looking at, as international development professionals as well, we have some indicators that you're really looking at. Maybe they're not just focused on like profit or income, but we have other social aspects as well that we're looking at. So making sure that you come into a good understanding with the private sector on what are the things that you will be looking at, and trying to set up systems where you can get information from the private sector person, you can get information from the community, and you can try and merge this information and try and think about, what's working well, what's not really working, what do we need to adapt, what are the cost benefits analysis really for this person who we are right now engaging to serve our communities. So a couple things,
Yeah.
but majorly looking at the monitoring systems.
I mean, the other thing is what can we do to incentivize them to come? Because these are some of the areas maybe private sectors or private organizations have not profiled as their new markets. So how do we incentivize them to come? Is a question of how do we work with government to support these particular people who want to come and invest in this kind of communities. So if that incentive is not there, then they don't feel it is attractive because of how they perceive Karamoja to be, because probably they think that it is too costly. But then it's a question of not having the right information. But then government not also expressing that they are really willing to support them to settle and do something meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah, and just in addition to that as well, I think Sylvester had earlier mentioned about, making sure that we have local players. And if you're trying to tie this into, for example, if you have one service provider that's situated in the capital city, for example, and it's a few kilometers from where we are working, then we're trying to look at, in this community, who are the people that we can start engaging to make sure that they're in a position to work with the private sector actor. Mm-hmm. And that's one key thing that, we really focus on right now when we're identifying those local partners, or we can call them, local service providers, just looking at, who are those people that are actually ready. And you have to make sure that you have a set of criteria on what does it mean for you to be ready to actually engage either, as a distributor, for example, or a supplier to a bigger private sector organization. So I think that's one critical role that as development actors we've been playing. But I think making sure that we have a criteria set out on how does this person actually look like, what, do we need this person to bring on the table before we start engaging them. I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so thank you very much for all of that. It appears that information, clarity on objective, and being flexible in the way you engage with private sector, those are the messages I'm getting from the two of you.
Yeah, so, but then if you are to strengthen community level service provider, access to finance is very important, because the reason why they probably want to do it, but capital is a bit not there. So what we do is, how do we put them in a network, link them with financial institution. They can be able to start saving among themselves and use their savings to position for more fund from financial institutions, so they can borrow more and build their community level capacity to be able to work with the established private actors. So because if there's no financial support, they cannot be able to do that. So remember, these are people who are willing to continue providing services to the community. What they need is capacity in terms of knowledge, capacity in terms of information, and the capacity in terms of access to finances for them to be able to grow their portfolio at the village level. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just one last question. What would you say is the one thing that is more important for a development professional trying to do private sector engagement? Just one in the last few seconds that we have. Florence.
Good question. I would say right information. Make sure you have the correct information before you start the engagement. Otherwise, I think you can be serving a different purpose from the stakeholder that you're engaging, and that brings a lot of conflict, or you're not able to achieve your goal. So make sure you have the correct information as far as, you know, setting your objectives, looking at the characteristics of the type of people you want to engage, the criteria that you will use to actually measure success, and also flexible, you know, as it was highlighted, I think being very flexible and adaptive is a strength.
Yeah. For what I can add is if I'm able to answer to private sector or private partner, why do they need to come now in this particular kind of community, which they have never thought of coming? So if I'm able to provide that answer to them, then they should be able to rush and come and take advantage of business opportunity that we have here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Randari. Sorry, Mr. Abara and Ms. Randari. Uh, I hope you will join us in the next session of Private Sector Engagement in Action, and we shall see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Dev
you.
TV. Looking forward to engage with you next time.
Thank you.